If you ever find a woman's legs standing upright in a doorway at midnight, perfectly balanced, perfectly still, waist ending in a wet, ragged stump, do not panic. Salt them. Pour salt, or ash, or crushed garlic into the open wound at the top, and whatever is flying over the rooftops right now, hunting, will never be able to put itself back together again. It will die screaming at sunrise, torn in half forever, because it made the one mistake every version of this creature eventually makes. It trusted that no one would find the half of it left behind. In the Philippines, especially the old villages of the Visayas, they call her the Manananggal, the one who separates. And unlike most monsters, she doesn't hide what she is. She just hides where the rest of her is sleeping. By daylight, the Manananggal looks like any woman. Often, disturbingly, a beautiful one. The stories insist on this detail again and again, as if beauty were the first and best layer of camouflage. She marries. She raises children. She greets her neighbors in the market. Some tellings say she doesn't even choose this life, that the curse passes to her the way a disease does, inherited from a mother or an aunt who never explained what she was passing down until it was already done. At night, when the moon is right and the hunger builds past what she can control, she goes somewhere private. A back room. A grove at the edge of the village. And there, her torso tears itself free from her waist with a sound the old stories describe simply as wet, no more detail than that, because no more detail was ever needed to keep children from wandering after dark. The legs stay behind, standing upright, waiting. Sometimes hidden. Sometimes not even that. The top half sprouts leathery bat wings from her shoulder blades and rises into the night sky, trailing her own intestines beneath her like some grotesque, glistening tail, hunting for what she actually came for. And what she came for is almost always the same. The Manananggal's preferred hunting ground is the home of a pregnant woman, and this is where the folklore turns from monstrous to something closer to grief wearing monstrous clothing. She lands on the thatched roof, silent despite the wingspan, and extends a long, hollow, proboscis-like tongue down through the gaps in the palm leaves, through the thinnest seam she can find above where the mother sleeps. She does not need to break in. She only needs a crack. Through that tongue, she drinks. Not blood, in most versions, something more specific, more devastating. The life of the unborn child itself, drawn out of the womb while the mother sleeps beside her husband, feeling nothing but a strange, bone-deep exhaustion she can't explain in the morning. Some families lost 3-4 pregnancies this way before an old healer finally told them what to look for. Garlic hung thick over every window. Ash scattered along the roofline. A blade laid beneath the sleeping mat, iron being one of the few things a Manananggal's magic cannot cross. And if you were desperate, if you were certain a Manananggal walked among your own neighbors, wearing a face you greeted every morning, there was one more thing you could do. You could go looking for her legs. There is a story told in the old barrios of Capais, a region so associated with these creatures that even now, people from other provinces say the name like a small joke that isn't really a joke, about a man who began to suspect his wife. She had grown thin in a strange way, he said. Not sick thin. Hollowed thin, the way a fruit looks after something has already eaten it from the inside and left the skin behind for show. 3 of their children had not survived the womb. Each time, the healer who examined her found the same faint, dark bruising along her collarbones and throat, bruising she could never explain, always waking with no memory of injury, only exhaustion. One night, unable to sleep beside the wrongness he could feel but not name, he pretended to snore and watched through slitted eyes as his wife rose silently from their sleeping mat, walked to the back room, and did not come out. He found her legs an hour later, standing perfectly upright just inside the doorway, as if she had simply stepped out of a dress and left it standing. The old stories are honest about what happened to him in that moment, and it's the part that makes this different from every monster story where the hero simply destroys the threat and walks away triumphant. He stood there a long time with the salt already in his hand. Because it was still her legs. Still the woman he had married. Still, somewhere over the rooftops right now, the face he had loved for 6 years, hunting, yes, monstrous, yes, but also, in some twisted way, not entirely her own choice. The versions of the story split here. the way real grief always splits a family down two different paths. In one telling, he salted the wound. She fell from the sky at dawn, and he raised their remaining children alone, never speaking of that night again. In the other telling, the one older women tell more quietly, and only to other women, he simply closed the door, and let her fly home to whatever half of herself was waiting up there in the dark. And when she landed at dawn, hollow-eyed and exhausted the way she always was, he said nothing. He just held her, strip away the wings and the trailing viscera, and the Manananggal sits in the same folkloric family as monsters found across the world wherever infant and maternal mortality once ran brutally, unexplainably high, a way to give shape and blame to loss that medicine of the time had no language for. A miscarriage was not simply a tragedy no one caused. It was something that could, in theory, be fought, prevented, hunted. But there's a second, quieter reading underneath the first, and it's the one the story itself seems to circle back to every time it reaches a husband holding salt in his open palm. The Manananggal is a woman split cleanly in two, one half domestic, rooted, sleeping beside the man who loves her, the other half airborne, hungry, doing things by night that the daylight half will never remember and could never explain if she did. Almost every culture that tells stories about women who become something else after marriage or motherhood is circling the same unbearable question, dressed up in wings and viscera so it's easier to look at directly. What happens to the part of her that used to fly free, before it got left behind, standing very still, in a doorway, waiting to be reattached? If your family has stories about the Manananggal, the Aswang, or anything like her, drop it in the comments, and if you're ever traveling through the old barrios and someone tells you to hang garlic over your window just for the season, take it seriously. They're not doing it out of habit. And do not forget to subscribe the channel.